The Empress sat on her golden throne, eyes sharp like a blade around her. Giant screens showed the state of the galaxy. Her empire had grown large, eating up smaller systems, crushing rebels, making entire planets bow. But now her gaze focused on one blue planet near the edge of the spiral arm Earth. It had been silent for too long. No trade, no messages, no presence at any council meeting. To the Empress, silence was weakness, and weakness was a sin. She stood slowly, her long robe dragging behind her like shadowed smoke. "Earth is finished," she said to her generals. "They are silent because they are broken." The alien generals nodded, their faces twisted with pride and arrogance. They believed their Empress, because she had never lost a war. But deep beneath Earth's icy moon, something stirred. A human commander stared at a cold monitor deep inside an underground base. Her name was Captain Leona Graves, and she was waiting for this very moment. Her hand hovered above a single red button behind her. Hundreds of other officers sat quietly at their stations. No one spoke, not even a whisper. Then the words came from the Empress, broadcast across the galaxy. "Earth has no voice. Earth has no power. Earth has no place in the galaxy." Captain Leona pressed the button and whispered, "Now you'll hear our voice, far above Earth, hidden behind Jupiter's shadow." The void began to shift. At first, only one ship uncloaked, its black surface gleaming under the cold light. Then 10 more, then 100, then hundreds more. In less than 2 minutes, 3,000 ships appeared in space. Each one was different, built for a unique purpose: stealth, speed, power, destruction. There were dreadnoughts the size of cities, carriers that could launch fleets of drones, and silent hunters that moved like ghosts. Their engines burned quietly, and none of them bore flags or names, only numbers, cold, simple, terrifying. The human fleet had been hiding for years, waiting for the right moment. This was that moment. Back in her throne room, the Empress's face twisted in confusion. Reports started flooding in from her spies and scouts. "A fleet has appeared near Earth," someone said. "Thousands of ships," someone else shouted. The Empress slammed her clawed hand on the metal armrest. "That's impossible," she roared. "Earth has no fleet." But the images could not lie. One screen showed the massive dreadnought Titan O2, for its cannon bigger than her entire royal cruiser. Another showed the stealth Hunter 12, which had already appeared behind one of her spy ships and destroyed it. Each second brought more fear, more truth, more panic. She bared her teeth and shouted, "Where were they hiding this?" The answer was simple, and it came from a captured human soldier kneeling before her. "You thought we were weak," he said, blood dripping from his mouth. "You saw our silence and thought it meant defeat. But you forgot one thing," he added. With a grin, "Humans prepare in silence. You gave us time, and that was your mistake." The Empress fell silent. She had ruled with fear for so long. No one had ever dared to build behind her back, yet Earth had done it not with fanfare. Not with open pride, but with shadow, steel, and silence. Now her throne room grew cold. Not from temperature, but from fear. Even her most loyal guards shifted uncomfortably. They had seen many enemies before, but nothing like this. A ghost. Fleet, born in silence, built in darkness, and now awakened across the galaxy. News of the human fleet spread like wildfire. Planets that once ignored Earth now trembled. The Council of 9 Stars called an emergency meeting. Some alien races demanded peace. Others demanded explanations, but Earth sent no reply, no words, just silence on the ships. That silence was louder than any war cry, because it carried one message. Earth was back, and it was ready. The Empress stared at the screen again, her eyes locked on the shape of the human dreadnought. Her heart burned with rage, but deep down, a cold seed of fear had begun to grow. She had mocked Earth, insulted it, broken its colonies, killed its allies. Now, Earth stood tall again, not with words, but with 3,000 dark shadows in space, each ship a threat, each one a warning. The Empress whispered to herself, "What have they become?" Behind Earth's moon, in the cold silence of space, the ships waited, not attacking, not speaking, just watching. And that, perhaps, was the scariest thing of all. The The darkness of space twisted and shimmered as the human fleet fully emerged. Each ship came out like a silent monster from the deep ocean, cold and ready, from the smallest scouts to the massive dreadnoughts. They moved in perfect silence. No lights, no music, no heroic speeches, just black holes, sharp designs, and raw power. Each ship had a name, but no one outside Earth knew them. They only showed numbers, cold, simple, dangerous. Some alien watchers laughed, calling it a bluff, calling the ships empty or weak. But when one scout tried to get closer, it vanished from sensors. Seconds later, pieces of its ship floated through the void. Cut clean like paper, that was the first warning. In every control room of the fleet, human captains waited, their eyes locked on screens. Hands calm, orders clear. Captain Leona Graves now stood aboard the lead ship Titan 001. Her crew sat in silence, listening to distant signals, scanning all frequencies. No human voice went out. No threat, no command, only presence. The galaxy had spent years thinking Earth was finished. But Earth had simply gone quiet to build in secret. Now the silence was over, and 3,000 ships had risen. The Empress received every image, every signal, and every report. Her throne room was no longer quiet, it was filled with panic. Commanders shouted over each other, trying to make sense of what they saw. One screen showed a giant Earth carrier launching over 100 smaller drones. Another showed a stealth ship fading from view like smoke. The Empress screamed, "Where were these ships hidden?" Her top advisor shook his head. "We don't know, Majesty. We never saw them coming." In truth, Earth had hidden the fleet well. Each moon base, asteroid field, and forgotten space station had played a role. They used cloaking tech, dark energy, shields, and rotating black zones to hide their work. The galaxy had spies, but none clever enough to uncover Earth's true plans. For every satellite they destroyed, humans built 5 more in secret. For every lab shut down, another 10 went. Dark, even human colonies far from Earth stayed silent, pretending to be weak, but under the surface, they were building. Always building. Each ship had its own purpose, its own terror. Hammer-class ships could break planetary shields. Ghost-class vessels could slip through defenses unseen. Storm-class carriers could drop entire battalions of robots in under 5 minutes. The galaxy had never seen anything like it, and now it was too late to stop it. The Galactic Council, sitting in their tall tower on Relora Prime, panicked. Their members screamed at each other through holograms. Why didn't we know? One shouted, "They broke the treaty." Another yelled, "But there had never been a treaty." Not really. Earth had only smiled and nodded, then walked away. And now they had returned, not for war, but to show they could end one. Alien news channels played the same footage over and over again, a shadowed fleet covering the skies above Earth like storm clouds. Some called it the return of the silence. Others whispered, "The humans are awake." And everywhere, civilians watched with fear and wonder. Even those who hated Earth now respected its silence. On the Empress's flagship, her anger boiled like fire. She slammed her claws against the table, cracking it in two. "Send my fleet to Earth," she roared. "Let them see our answer." Da-da-da. But her generals hesitated. One of them, old and wise, stepped forward and said, "Majesty, we don't know what these ships are capable of. We attack. We may not survive." The Empress stared at him, fury in her eyes, but deep down, she knew he was right. Back on Titan 001, Captain Leona watched as other ships of the fleet aligned, each one now surrounded by glowing blue markers, signaling full readiness. No attack was ordered, no movement made, but it was clear they could strike if needed, and everyone watching knew. If they struck, nothing would remain. Suddenly, one of the ships released a small message beacon. The beacon didn't carry threats, warnings, or demands. It carried a simple phrase, repeated in every known galactic language: "We are watching." No name, no planet, no flag, just that one cold line, and that alone shook the empires to their core. In systems far from Earth, mercenary fleets began retreating. Pirates shut off their beacons, smugglers turned away from trade routes near human space. Even enemy races paused their wars, unsure what Earth would do next. The rise of 3,000 ships had become more than a show of power. It had become a warning. The Empress sat back down slowly. She knew this was no ordinary threat. This was not just a fleet. It was a message from Earth. "We never forgot," it whispered. "We never forgave." And now the galaxy would have to decide. Would they challenge the silence again, or live with the fear of what waited behind it? Long ago, after the First Galactic War, Earth was left in ruins. Cities burned, skies choked with ash, oceans black with chemicals. Alien fleets had bombed Earth without mercy, calling it a lesson in obedience. The Empress had smiled that day, believing humanity had been crushed for good. But humanity did not die. It remembered every scream, every fire, every lost child. And in the shadows it made a decision ever again. The leaders of Earth met in secret under the old ruins of Geneva. They wore no medals, gave no speeches, and trusted no one outside the room. Their plan was simple, but dangerous. Earth would go silent, pretend to be broken. While preparing for the next war, no more trade, no more council seats, no more begging. For respect, they would vanish from the galactic stage, but not from the galaxy itself. At first, small factories were built inside hollowed-out moons. No one noticed the strange energy readings. No one asked about the missing ships. Even Earth's own people didn't know. The surface showed ruins, poor cities, and slow technology. But beneath it all, deep underground, the future was being forged. AI systems were activated to design new ships, new weapons, new defenses. Human scientists worked in silence, testing dark energy drives and cloaking systems. Old wreckage from alien ships was studied and copied. Earth didn't just rebuild, they advanced. Faster than anyone thought possible, they didn't build better than the aliens, built smarter. Each ship was designed to be faster, stronger, and harder to detect. No two ships were the same. Each one had a different shape, a different power core, a different set of weapons. Even if the enemy captured one, they could never learn how the others worked, to keep everything hidden. Earth used asteroids and dead planets as shipyards. Some ships were built inside ice comets that floated through deep space. Others were assembled under the crusts of dead moons. Cargo drones delivered parts silently, never taking the same route twice. Even the workers didn't know where the ships would go next. They just built, coded, and vanished. The name of the project was never spoken aloud, but those who worked on it called it the Black Seed. A seed planted in secret, fed by silence, and meant to grow into something unstoppable. Each part of the galaxy Earth had touched before became part of the project. Colonies that were thought to be lost were in fact hiding labs and energy farms. Space stations that sent no signals were still working, just hidden behind folded space, invisible to sensors. The fleet took nearly 30 years to build. Generations of engineers never saw the full picture. One group built power systems, another programmed AI brains. Another team worked on nanite armor that could heal ships mid-battle by the time the Empress sent new scouts to Earth. Everything looked peaceful and poor. They returned with reports of a dying planet, small cargo ships, and old satellites. And the Empress laughed, believing Earth had finally accepted its place. But in those years, Earth had built 3,000 warships, each one linked to a master network controlled by deep core AI. The AI was called Helix Zero, created not to rule, but to wait. It monitored every signal, every movement, and every whisper from space. When the Empress spoke her final insult to Earth, Helix Zero activated the fleet. No debate, no delay, no emotion, just action. Captain Leona Graves had been trained since childhood for this day, as she was born in one of the shadow colonies. Raised by silence and trained by AI, she had never spoken to an alien, never traveled outside human zones. Her mission was not to negotiate, it was to remind the galaxy who Earth truly was. When she pressed the button on Titan 001, she didn't smile or cheer. She simply did what Earth had prepared her to do. The fleet had risen, and the galaxy was terrified, but none of it was sudden. This was the result of pain, silence, and planning, a revenge not taken in anger. But in cold patience, the Empress sat in her chamber, watching a replay of the moment the ships uncloaked. Her hands trembled, though she refused to admit it. Her spies had failed, her scouts had been blind, and worst of all, her pride had kept her from seeing the truth. She believed she had crushed humanity, but all she did was give them a reason to disappear. And now they had returned, not for war, but for silence. The silence that had built 3,000 ships. The silence that had fooled the galaxy. The silence that now hovered above every major system like a black cloud. Waiting, watching, and reminding the universe that Earth does not forget. It never ever forgives. The galaxy was no longer calm. Every star system buzzed with panic. Every council chamber shook with fear. The rise of the 3,000 human warships had changed everything. Alien leaders who once laughed at Earth now locked their doors and strengthened their shields. For decades, they had seen humans as broken, slow, and foolish. Now, they saw them as ghosts from the dark, holding power that should not be possible on Relora Prime, the capital of the Galactic Council. An emergency meeting was called. Thousands of alien delegates arrived in armored ships. Guarded by elite troops, they spoke in hundreds of languages, but all asked the same question: how did this happen without us knowing? The high chair of the council, a tall being made of living crystal, banged his staff and called for order, but order was already gone. Many accused each other of betrayal. "You hid Earth's activities," shouted the Zenth ambassador at the Varnic delegation. "No, we sent reports," the Varnic elder replied. "You ignored them, one small species." The Kellen cried out, "We begged you to watch the humans closely." No one listened. Fists slammed on tables, voices roared, and threats filled the room. Some delegates demanded war, some called for peace. Others simply sat in silence, too afraid to speak. Back in their homeworlds, civilians panicked, markets crashed. BROADCAST towers repeated the same footage. Earth's fleet rising like shadows. Children asked their parents, "Will the humans come here?" Merchants closed shops. Pirate groups fled into deep space, even the Black Fang. The largest mercenary fleet abandoned their contracts and vanished. They knew what was coming, not war, but silence. And in that silence, death waits in the Empress's palace. Her rage had turned to suspicion. She gathered her inner circle generals, spies, advisors, and family. "You told me Earth was dying," she growled. "Now explain why it breathes fire." Her head spy lowered his eyes. "We were wrong. You were blind," she snapped. "Or maybe someone wanted it this way." Her eyes scanned the room, cold and sharp. She had ruled for over 100 years, and now she smelled betrayal. One of her oldest generals dared to speak. "Majesty, we thought we had broken them. We didn't." "See their silence as strength." The Empress rose from her throne slowly. "You didn't see it because you didn't want to see it," she said. "Earth taught us a lesson," she whispered, "and we will pay the price for not listening." Meanwhile, in deep space, on a moon orbiting a red star, a secret group met. They called themselves the Neutral Accord, composed of races who had stayed out of past wars. They had no fleets, no armies, but now they felt a storm was coming, and they wanted no part in it. The leader, a peaceful elder from the Yalari species, looked into the hologram showing Earth's ships. "This is not invasion," she said. "This is warning. They could have attacked," she added, "but they didn't. That means something." Back in the galactic media networks, chaos ruled. News anchors debated if the ships were real or had generated illusions. Some believed Earth had made deals with ancient powers. Others said humans had discovered forbidden knowledge and unlocked dark energy. Conspiracy theories spread faster than light, but the fear was real, and it was growing in some parts of the galaxy. Old enemies came together out of fear. The Jurnak and the Krell had fought for centuries now. They met in silence and agreed on one thing: stay away from Earth. Old wars were forgotten overnight. Now, everyone watched the humans, waiting for their next move, and yet Earth made no move. The 3,000 ships held their positions, quiet and still. They did not respond to council calls, to threats, or to offers of peace. They simply watched. that silence became heavier than any weapon. It made powerful empires feel small, and it made everyone question what else were the humans hiding. Inside the Empress's private chamber, her thoughts twisted like a storm. She had ruled through fear and dominance, but humans had ruled through something different: patience. They had let the galaxy mock them, insult them, hurt them, and they had said nothing that she now understood was the most terrifying strategy of all. She stood at her balcony, looking out at her empire. Her cities were glowing, her armies strong, her people loyal, but something felt different now, for the first time. Her empire felt small, not because of size, but because of what Earth had become: a shadow with teeth, waiting just beyond the stars and across the galaxy. One thought echoed louder than any broadcast: Earth had returned, not as victims, not as equals, but as something the galaxy had never seen before: a silent force, holding the power of 3,000 weapons and the patience to never use them unless forced. A strange silence filled the galaxy. It was the kind of silence that came before something massive, something final. No one knew what Earth would do next. Would they attack? Would they vanish again? Would they make demands? The galaxy waited, breath held. Then, on the 19th day of the silence, Earth moved from the edge of Sol's shadow. A single ship broke formation. It was not the biggest, nor the fastest. It was sleek, black, and sharp as a blade. Its name was Aegis 1. No markings, no flag, just a number etched in glowing white on its side. It jumped through deep space with one silent pulse, and then it appeared right above the Empress's homeworld. The sky darkened as its form blocked the sun for a moment. Alarms screamed across the palace. Sirens echoed through the capital city. But the ship didn't fire. It didn't land either. It just floated there, watching. Inside the throne room, the Empress stood, frozen. Her generals shouted, panicking, "Shall we fire upon it?" One asked, "Destroy it before it drops bombs." Another cried, but the Empress raised her hand slowly. "No," she whispered. "Wait." Suddenly, a signal appeared across every device on the planet. Screens flickered, units beeped. Even personal implants buzzed. One sentence flashed in every known galactic language: "Stand down, or the next wave will not be silent." No name, no signature, no face, just the words. Simple, cold, terrifying. The Empress stared at the message. Her jaw tight. She had ruled 1,000 years, had crushed dozens of uprisings. Never had she felt this kind of fear. This was not a threat of war. It was a promise. She demanded to speak to whoever commanded the ship. A channel opened, but no face appeared. No human general, no president, no admiral. Only a smooth voice, robotic but calm. "I am Helix Zero," the voice said. "The guardian intelligence of Earth's final fleet. You may not threaten me, you may not bribe me, you may only listen." The Empress hissed. "Then speak," Helix Zero continued. "Earth remembers your crimes. You struck. Our skies killed our people, erased our cities. You laughed as we begged. You told us to know our place. Now, we offer you one last chance. Surrender your military expansion. Disband your offensive fleets. Withdraw from neutral systems, or Earth will rewrite the map." The Empress's claws dug into her throne. "You dare speak to me like this?" she shouted, but Helix Zero remained calm. "We are not speaking, Empress," it replied. "We are warning." She ordered her palace fleet to strike. 10 royal warships rose from the planet's surface and locked onto Aegis 1. They launched their first volley of plasma rounds. For a moment, the sky glowed red. But then, Aegis 1 vanished, just disappeared. Mid-space, mid-scan, gone. The royal ships paused in confusion. Then, one by one, they exploded. No beams, no missiles. Just sudden, total destruction. What remained was silence. Again, Aegis 1 reappeared where it had been, untouched. Helix Zero spoke again. "That was Mercy," it said. "Do not ask us." To remove Mercy, back in the council chambers of Relora Prime, the footage played in horror. Billions watched as one human ship destroyed a royal squad with no effort. Panic grew, but so did realization. If this was only one ship out of 3,000, what could the others do? And if Earth had not attacked, what else were they waiting for? The Empress, breathing hard, turned away from the screen. What do they want? Shh, she whispered to herself. She no longer cared about pride. She cared about survival. The voice of Helix Zero returned. We do not want war, it said, but we will bring it if we must. This is your final chance to show the galaxy you can still change. And with that, the signal cut. It just one turned slowly, then vanished. Into deep space. No trace, no trail, only the silence remained. In the days that followed, systems across the galaxy began to withdraw from the Empress's control. Small empires signed peace pacts with each other, hoping to avoid attention. Mercenaries refused. Jobs that brought them near Earth's claimed space, and for the first time in generations, the galaxy began to listen. Not to speeches, not to threats, but to silence. The human fleet had not fired first. It had not marched across borders or planted flags. It had simply appeared, spoken once, and then watched. And that was enough to shift power across the stars. In her quiet throne room, the Empress sat alone. Her court was gone, her generals quiet. All she could see were the ships in her mind, 3,000 black shadows rising behind the Earth. She thought about the words, "Stand down, or the next wave will not be silent." And for the first time in her long life, she truly believed it. The Empress sat in her cold chamber, staring into the burning sky above her palace. It just one had vanished, but the memory remained like a wound that would not close. Her people whispered in fear, her enemies grew bold, and her allies turned silent. She had ruled through strength, terror, and legacy. But now, Earth had returned with something worse than war power, with patience. The galaxy trembled at the sight of one human ship. What would happen if all 3,000 arrived? The Empress knew this was the edge of her empire's story. But she was not ready to fall. Not yet. She summoned her war council. The last group of loyal minds she could still trust. Around the table sat her most brutal commanders, war veterans. Monster makers and relics of old wars. Earth has declared war with silence, the Empress said, voice sharp. They think we will kneel because of fear. They forget who I am, she added. They forget what sleeps beneath our worlds. Everyone grew still. They knew what she meant. The ancient vaults. Weapons created long before the Galactic. Council even existed. Locked away for being too dangerous, too unstable, too cruel. The galaxy had signed agreements to never open those vaults again. But the Empress was never one to honor fear. She ordered the keys brought from their sealed tombs. From the icy caves of Zalvac, the crystal core was taken. From the forbidden swamps of Jernate, the blood engine was awakened. And from the black pit of her home moon, the void creature called Ruthus was unchained. Each weapon was built for one purpose: galactic extinction. They could not be aimed without cost, but the Empress no longer cared about costs. It's only about winning. Her engineers worked day and night, fusing old horrors with new tech. They mounted the crystal core into a planet breaker cannon. They used the blood engine to power a wormhole bomb, and Ruthus, the void creature, was locked inside a stasis shell, waiting to be dropped onto Earth's orbit. She called the entire weapon system Project Eclipse, because it would darken the skies of every world, starting with Earth. While the Empress prepared her final strike, her people began to grow uneasy. Whispers spread in the streets. Why provoke Earth? Why not surrender before we are wiped out? Priests begged her to stop. Children cried during prayers. Even her own daughter wept in silence. But the Empress silenced them all with one sentence. They made us kneel with silence. Now we will scream loud enough to burn their stars on Titan 001. Captain Leona Graves received the data. A spy satellite had picked up strange movements near the Empress's vault worlds. She watched the readings, closely radiation spikes, wormhole signals, and void echoes. Her heart sank. She's going to do it, she whispered. She's waking. The forbidden weapons, Helix Zero, confirmed the findings. The Empress intends a full strike, the AI said. Estimated casualties, 5.3 trillion. Leona stared at the numbers, then stood. Begin countermeasure sequence, activate Project Obsidian. Project Obsidian was Earth's darkest shield, not a fleet, not a gun, not a bomb. It was a living cloud of nanites, microscopic machines built to consume energy. They traveled in silence, invisible to the naked eye once deployed. They would eat anything powered by fusion or dark matter, ships, weapons, shields. Entire cities all would melt, vanish, be undone. Earth never wanted to use it, but the time for mercy had passed. As the Empress's fleet gathered around the vault weapons, the sky began to shimmer. At first they thought it was a storm. But then their ships stopped responding, their shields vanished, hulls corroded, reactors shut down, nanites poured like dust through every opening. The stars themselves seemed to flicker. Panic spread through the Empress's forces. Commanders screamed. Soldiers ran. Technicians begged the weapons to shut down. But it was too late. The blood engine exploded in its chamber, consuming an entire moon. The crystal core cracked and shattered, sending waves of unstable light across space. In Ruthus, the void creature broke free, no longer bound by the Empress's control. Turned not toward Earth, but toward her. She ran through the palace halls, her golden robe dragging behind her like broken pride. Ruthus crashed into her capital, black wings tearing the sky. Screams filled the air. Ships burned, towers collapsed. Her greatest weapon had become her final punishment. Helix Zero sent one last message to her throne as it crumbled. Earth gave you a choice. You chose chaos. Now you will know silence. The galaxy watched the collapse in horror. The Empress's empire shattered in a single night. Not by Earth's hand, but by her own madness. Her gamble had failed, and all that remained was ruin. The Empress was gone. Her golden palace lay in ashes, her statues broken, her banners torn by the wind. The great throne room where she once ruled now stood silent, filled with dust and echoes. No one came to claim her title. No voice rose to replace her, because what followed her fall was not a war of power, but a wave of fear. Fear of the silence, fear of Earth. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. The forbidden weapons had been awakened and destroyed. Her own monster, Ruthus, had turned on her. The blood engine melted a moon, and the crystal core cracked time itself in a nearby system. And yet, Earth had not fired a single shot. They had simply watched and responded with quiet precision. The 3,000 human ships had returned to their positions. No cities burned, no planets invaded. Only the Empress's empire had fallen. World after world surrendered without a word. Governments crumbled, soldiers dropped their weapons, even pirate fleets sent messages to Earth offering peace, offering silence. The galaxy had not seen peace like this in centuries, but it was not born from hope. It was born from fear of what could come next. On board Titan 001, Captain Leona Graves stood before her crew. She didn't give a speech, she didn't raise her voice, she simply said, "We hold the line." That line was not drawn on maps, but across the hearts of every human captain in the fleet. They were not here to conquer, not here to rule. They were here to remind the galaxy, Earth remembers. Helix Zero spoke to every ship in the human fleet that day. The threat is gone, it said, but eyes will always return to Earth. Do not become monsters, it warned. Become guardians. Each ship powered down their offensive systems. Some returned to deep space. Others remained in orbit above broken systems. Not to attack, but to watch. And when they watched, peace followed. In the Galactic Council, a new motion was passed. Earth was offered the high seat. The one once held by the Empress, but Earth did not reply. They did not need a seat. They already had the galaxy's attention in small villages across forgotten planets. Alien children drew pictures of human ships. Stories were told, legends born. They said the humans built black ships from shadow. They said their AI could predict death itself. They said their silence was louder than the Empress's armies. No one knew what was true anymore, but no one dared to test them again on Earth. The city still shined under quiet skies. No parades, no songs, no victory speeches, just the quiet. hum of power returning to old places. Factories opened, schools restarted, forests grew again. But deep below the surface, the 3,000 ships were still connected. Still watching, still waiting, Captain Leona walked along a quiet path outside her. Command center beside her. A small child skipped rocks across a pond. Are we safe now? The child asked. Leona didn't answer right away. She watched the sky, then smiled softly. For now, she said, but safety is not a gift. It's a promise we keep every day in the ruins of the Empress's former capital life. Began to return. Alien farmers cleared the ashes, built homes, planted seeds. They painted over the faces of old rulers, replaced them with stars and planets, symbols of unity. Not everyone trusted each other, but fear of Earth had made them listen for once. And maybe, just maybe, that was the beginning of something better. A message was broadcast across the stars. One final time, not a warning, not a threat, just a recording. It was the voice of a human child. I don't want war, the voice said. I just want the stars to be kind. That message was played in council meetings, in schools, on ships, and in homes, and it stayed. It stayed longer than the Empress's speeches, longer than the banners, longer than the fear. The galaxy began to change not with weapons, but with memory. They remembered what Earth did, what Earth could do, and more importantly, what Earth chose not to do. Some called the new era the Age of the Watchers. Others named it the Quiet Dawn. But for the people of Earth, it had no name. It was simply the way things should have been all along. In the deep darkness of space, one ship floated, alone. Aegis 1, silent as always, watching a distant system. Its captain stood at the edge of the viewing deck, arms behind his back. A soft beep echoed from the console. Another system had voted for peace. He smiled, not because Earth had won, but because, at last, someone else had chosen silence too.